Social media. Welcome. This is another episode of what do we call this? The bi-weekly leadership chat with Chris and JJ, or Leadership Live with Chris and JJ. And so it's Chris Pienkowski here. I'm JJ Hardy. I own Victory Leadership Coaching. He has Straight Arrow Coaching. And today we have a really cool topic that we're going to be discussing, and that is trust as leaders. So some of you won't watch this video, so you can read all the crap that I put in below this, or you can listen to us and learn something from two experts that have like a combined probably 50 to 80 years of experience in implementing these things. Okay, so I'm going to start off with saying, Chris, how you doing today?
I'm good, JJ. It's Friday. I've woken up almost every morning this week thinking it was Friday, even on Tuesday. So it's been a long week. But I'm happy it's finally Friday.
That just hurts my heart to hear you say that, man, because when you wake up thinking that you have the end in mind already, that just makes every day drag on like crazy.
Yeah, but every day's been busy, so I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, that's a blessing for sure. You know, that if you're busy, that means people are getting helped and you're providing more cheese for the family. Okay.
Right.
Well, likewise, you know, it's been busy, but it's been good. Got some good things going on. And, you know, I think we should just go ahead and get straight into it. That way we can get back to what we were doing and provide some value for these people. So trust as a leader. When you think of trust, Chris, what does that mean to you?
Man, trust is so important. It means everything to me when it comes to leadership and relationships. Relationships with your people is so important. The world is built on relationships. And if you don't have trust with them, then you have a really hard time moving forward. Trust is the cornerstone. And, it's actually, so it's funny, right? A lot of people know I like to do these. I got my whiteboard. But there's a book called The Five Dysfunctions of a Team. And in that book, and man, the author is like escaping me right now. But it's an awesome book.
What's it called again?
The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And the book's on my bookshelf right over there. I don't want to get up mid live stream, but
people will look it up. I'm pretty sure there's not too many books that are called exactly that.
Right. And so what he talks about here is, and I'll show my whiteboard, but trust is the foundation of any high performing organization, right? If you don't have trust, then you can't have healthy conflict. When you know that people aren't out to get each other and stab each other in the back, and they've got trust, now they're able to really talk about the hard issues. And when you don't have healthy conflict, then you're not able to get commitment from people on the things that they're supposed to do. Without commitment, there's no accountability. And when there's no accountability, the results suffer. So having that trust as the foundation to any high-performing organization is really what makes everything else happen.
I agree. You know, I use a pyramid as well. And, you know, it's kind of built on trust. But when I go into a job and I'm talking to my team initially, I like to use the pyramid in a different way. So I make it a point to tell everyone that they all matter. There's not one person on this team that I value more than another person.
Right.
Because guess what? When you have everyone in the shape of a pyramid, and I usually bring blocks with me. That's just, maybe I'm a nerdy guy, I don't know, but I always have. I had blocks with me, and I would even show them. I'm like, look, if every person here is a block, then if I knock out just 2 of you because I devalue you, then the entire team will fall apart. And then I do it, and the whole pyramid falls apart. So if you think for one moment throughout the course of me working with you that I don't value you. We need to have a conversation because I do. And if you want to know why, I'd be happy to tell you. And so that pyramid, you can brief that in 50 different ways.
Right.
And I like how it's tiered through commitment and trust and all these other things. That's a really good one. I'm gonna have to look at the 5 dysfunctions of a team because that's I haven't heard of that one. So seems like it would be a good, if nothing else. I always learn something every day, but I think that one would definitely teach me something.
Yeah, excellent book. And I can't believe that I blanked on the author's name, but you're right. People will look it up. That's the only book with that title. But the value of people is everyone else has to be on that same page. That there's no one more valuable than the other. We all work together to accomplish these shared goals. But that's also where trust comes into play. You have to be able to trust the person to your left and to the right that what they're working towards is the same as what you're working towards, right? It's the greater good of us as a team accomplishing something.
Esprit de corps.
What's that?
Esprit de corps. That's what we
Exactly.
call it in the military. That's what it is. Yes.
You're absolutely right. And when you know that you can have a conversation with the person to the left or right of you and say, hey, look, the road that we're walking down right now, I don't think is going to help us achieve that goal. Let's look at other solutions. Let's have a conversation. If there's no trust, then that person you're talking to is like, are they trying to like throw me under the bus and get me to change direction? But when you have trust and you're both like, yeah, we have a common goal and that may not be the right next step. Let's dig into it. That's where all of the difference happens.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will add to that, but I'm going to go ahead and say that it's Patrick Lencioni.
Oh, I just had to hear the first name.
Hey, I have 2 screens here. I was able to multitask. Anyway, not really multitask, but anyway. So when I think of trust, I think of it in the same way. Well, I think of it in the same way, but different words come to mind. So when you think of trust, I think of people. And when you say not throwing people under the bus, that's exactly right. We need to make sure everybody understands that, trust and friendship are not the same thing. Because in my experience in the past, I've told people, well, you need to trust that person to your left and your right. I was a soldier. I was a service member. That is exactly the foundation on which we live, because when we go out into a combat zone, we have to rely on each other. But I also let them know that person doesn't have to be your friend. And honestly, sometimes it works out better if they're not. Because if you have a deep friendship with somebody, then everything is going to be emotional. But if you don't, then you can act more strategically and with a sounder state of mind. But you have to trust them, because if you don't, then the whole team can fall apart, and it leads to so many other things. Teamwork requires communication.
Yep.
If you don't trust them, you're not going to talk to them. Teamwork requires everybody on the team to have a certain level of emotional intelligence so that they are approachable. I mean, there's just so many things, but communication, I think, is the biggest one. And if there's not trust from one person to the next, then the whole team is going to fall apart. And actually, that starts with the leader of that team.
Absolutely.
Because if you're not leading by example and bringing people together to help them understand that this is the goal, you're taking a crap in the bed, is like I like to tell some people.
That's right. And the communication piece ties in with, in Lencioni's pyramid, confrontation, right? It's right above trust. And people, I think, automatically think of confrontation in the negative light. But healthy confrontation is good. And you need to be able to have those conversations, you need to be able to sometimes even bang on the desk or on the table or whatever to get your point across, understanding that we're working on, problems, not people, right? It's not personal. We're trying to achieve a certain goal. And when that trust isn't established, then the lines get blurred and confrontation is seen as negative. But trust is there. Think about someone who's working the high wires as an electrician, right? You are teamed up with somebody. You may not like that guy. You're not going fishing with him on Saturdays. But if he tells you that your harness isn't properly connected, then you need the trust that he's like got your back, because he doesn't want to see you fall to your death. And if you don't trust him and you're like, dude, I've connected this a million times, I'm fine, you're putting yourself at risk. So you've got to have that trust in order to have those conversations, and sometimes hard conversations.
Yeah. Oh man, that's why sometimes friendships are sometimes important to be separated from work, because I'll be honest with you, a friendship in the workplace, it complicates things.
It does.
You can hang out and have a barbecue with somebody, but that doesn't necessarily make them your friend. You have to have some sort of a bond. But the deeper that bond is, the more likely it is that that bond is going to interfere with things at work. And that's a whole other conversation. We can probably make an entire 30-minute chat about that one. But
yeah,
at the end of the day, you're right. I mean, even in a family at home where emotions fly, by the way, I am not nearly as good at doing all of these things that we're talking about at home as I am when I'm at work. Just because these people mean so much more. They do. And that's not taken away from the fact that I care about people deeply. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Right.
But if Joe Snuffy at work does something crazy, you have the ability to calm down a little bit and say, oh, we need to talk about this. There's something we need to do to change that. But at home, it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
Not going to explain how that happens with me, but it's not always pretty. I care so much. I don't want somebody to get hurt. I don't want, and I remember back in my past with all the mistakes I've made, but when you are dealing with trust, you said something very important. When something needs to be aired out, whether it's at home or at work, it has to be done, regardless of the implications of bringing that, of how that, what kind of conversation that will stimulate, whatever that looks like. If somebody is about to, I'll use your example, if their harness is coming loose, or maybe there's a fray in the harness or what have you, if somebody is like, oh my gosh, I've said something before and he yelled at me and that was horrible and blah, 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 they're not going to say it.
Right.
But even if they've yelled at you before, it's important to make sure that you have the conversation with your people to say, hey, look, people don't like being told that they're doing something wrong. But regardless, if there's a safety incident, especially, everybody is a safety, you need to make sure you bring it up, because it could mean the life of that person. And I guarantee, as much as you dislike or like that person, if he dies as a result of you not saying something, or if he gets injured as a result of you not saying something, remember what feeling that stimulates, because it's not going to be a positive one.
That's right.
So safety is important, obviously, but that's just an extreme version of why it's important to have a conversation. But that also extends, and I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot, but and that also extends to some minor things, like, say, Joe Snuffy showing up late one day out of every week, and you never say anything about it. Eventually, monkey see, monkey do. They know that he's getting away with it. So if you don't have that conversation, it's gonna have a larger impact on your team.
And so I'll tie that conversation back into trust, right? Because if you're not having that conversation with Joe Snuffy, then the trust of your people, the other people on that team, starts to erode, because they're like, are his interests in the greater good of us as a group, achieving a goal, or are his interests more aligned with Joe, who's showing up late and he's not saying anything? So by not saying things, you're actually eroding your trust from other people, because they're like, all right, where's this guy's priorities lie?
Well, and this is why I like the book, The Dichotomy of Leadership, because they explain this very well. But there's also a point where you can go too far.
Yep.
So if you can also destroy the trust on your team if you're nitpicking every minor thing that happens. You have to understand when to draw a line and actually hold it. Everyone's going to make mistakes. Right. Sometimes it's out of character. Sometimes it needs to be addressed. Sometimes it doesn't. But at the end of the day, if you are just that guy that's on everything, everyone, all the time, people are going to be like, this guy's freaking nuts. Yeah. And they're not even going to want to talk to you.
That's right.
Now, attention to detail is important, but come on, people, when you are constantly nitpicking everything, that's micromanaging. You don't want to do that.
That's the worst kind of managing.
You have to have balance.
Yep.
Because it's important to have conversations, but it's also important to notice things and decide when to say it. And by the way, that's useful, because if you let certain things slide and you take note of it later on when they're starting to take advantage back, that does happen too. You can say, hey, look, guys, I am not going to be writing up anybody for this, but I've noticed this, and this, and I'm not saying anything about it. But if this is going to happen, now it's time to have another conversation.
Yeah.
But don't nitpick all the time.
Right.
You're going to lose all credibility on your team.
That's right.
Credibility is trust.
Absolutely.
Trust equals good relationships. So, big brain, come on.
So, what other ways does trust impact the dynamics of a team and the performance of a team, in your opinion?
Well, trust is everything, but we'll go ahead and say, let me think about this for a second. So when I think of it, we'll go back to your word dysfunction. If there's no trust, if teams are built on relationships, communication, and having to work together, even when nobody else is around. Of course, when the manager is there, everybody's going to work together because they're going to be scrambling to make sure everything is getting done. But you want to make sure that even when you're not paying attention as a leader, your team doesn't have an issue coming together. And, there are things that you can do to help build that trust. Work with them. Every once in a while, you got to lead by example, because some of the things that affect these people willing to trust each other and work together is that if you're not showing them the way from the very beginning, then they're going to lose their way in the end. So if you want your team to trust each other, you need to get on the ground and get your hands dirty once in a while. Even if it's in an office environment, you might not be getting your hands dirty. You might get a paper cut or something. But, at the end of the day, you're doing the work with them. You're showing them that you're not going to ask them to do things. You're actually going to do it with them. And when it starts at the top that you're doing that, now they trust you. Yeah. And when you're not there, they're going to be like, I don't want to disappoint anybody on this team. We have somebody who's, at the top of this team getting down here dirty with us all the time. What business do we have blowing each other off if he's willing to get down here and get his hands dirty every once in a while? So that's a factor too. I mean, you got to trust each other because you told them to. You have to go in there and show them how to do it. You have to lead them in the right direction.
So that's a really, really important example. And, when I look back on my career, the times that I have kind of been in the trenches with my people were the times that we strengthened our relationships, right? And relationships build trust. Um, and it's just it could be the simplest task. Like, as you were saying that, I was thinking back to a time when I was running this company and we had a big major client who was operating senior living communities. And there were like 300 in some of these communities all across the United States. And we were sending out kits that the sales team was going to be putting in each of these communities. And, the kits were multiple pieces. We had the box up, however many, 300 some boxes full of these kits. And when all the pieces arrived, I remember the one operations person and, one of our, I want to say like an admin, they start putting this stuff together and I come out of my office and I was just like, all right, let's build an assembly line and let's build this stuff. Both of these people told me, like, you're running the show here. You don't need to be building these boxes with us. And I said, no, I'm here to, work with you. You're not working for me. We're working together. And I don't know, maybe it took us an hour to box up 300 some boxes of these kits and have them ready to be sent out. But just the back and forth conversation, because it was kind of mindless work, right? Put A, B, and C into a box, seal it up, rock and roll. But we learned so much about each other in that hour that we wouldn't have learned otherwise. It strengthened the relationship. It built greater trust. And they saw that, hey, Chris isn't afraid to roll up his sleeves and come out here and get involved in anything that we need him to get involved in. And I can probably make a list of times that I've done that because it's part of my personality, but it's also, without even thinking about it, you're building trust in relationships.
You're right. Well, because you provided one, I suppose I probably have to do the same thing. Otherwise, maybe I'll lose some of my credibility and Chris can have this leadership chat bi-weekly by himself. No, but I remember there was one time, and it's another example, but it's I'm taking another spin on it because it's important at no matter what level you're at, if you have oversight of something, that you get down in the trenches once in a while. So while I was on active duty, at one point it was only my second staff position, and that was after I had been working in the military probably close to 8 years, give or take, and I was a transportation guy, so we had all different sorts of things that I had to do throughout the years. I managed operations in trucking. I managed air freight. I managed sea freight. I managed, what's the other one? Oh, we did train too. So trucking, the whole 9 yards. And I'm not saying that to toot my own horn. I'm saying that because I spent some time out in the trenches, as a lot of us do before we get up into these office positions. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, what business do we have leading an entire program if we don't understand how the program works?
Right.
Well, part of what I did at this particular duty station, and I apologize to the gentleman, I'm not going to say your name if you're listening to this and it's you, but there was one time where we went and supervised every early morning convoy to make sure they left on time. Equipment inspected, tie downs go, all the paperwork from the state squared away and in hand of every vehicle, so that if they got pulled over by the authorities, that we didn't get a call or our higher headquarters didn't get a call, so on and so forth. Well, the leader of this entire team, one morning, he was 2 hours late, which would have put him not only late for all of the inspections that he was supposed to do, but it was also an hour late for the SP, which is start point. That's when the convoy actually leaves the gate. What a big deal in a military operation. It's a huge deal. So I waited about 20 minutes, right? All of his people were there. They were doing what they were supposed to do, strapping things down, making sure everything was good to go. And me as the office guy, I was the one that facilitated all the paperwork and made sure everything was good to go so that they could SP on time legally. I had to step down and I had to go and I had to start inspecting equipment. And by the way, I had to have somebody go run to the office real quick and print out about 50 inspections so that I could make this happen. I got all the inspections done. I helped correct deficiencies so that, the CGs going back and forth on the tie downs, they were all good to go. Everything was straight. And, I briefed the team before the convoy, made sure they were all good to go. By the way, this leader was still not there. This manager was not there. The sergeant was not there. How important it is for you to get down into the trenches once in a while. And the convoy left on time. And an hour later, I stuck around. I was visiting with some of the senior leaders that didn't go on this convoy. And he strolled through the gate. Never answered his phone. Never nothing. So we had to have a conversation with him about leadership specifically and why it's important to be there for your people. Because if he wouldn't have showed up, everything would have been nasty.
Right.
Nobody would have known what was going on. Nobody had paperwork because he wasn't there. I had to go print that out too. And it was messy. Well, in the military, they train on leadership on a regular, consistent basis. So he knew he was wrong when he walked through that gate. And he cried. And that I'm not pointing that out to, smack this guy in the face. But at the end of the day, as leaders, if we're not checking every once in a while, if we're not getting down on the ground and making sure things are good to go, if something goes wrong and you don't know about it, guess who's accountable for that?
You are.
You are. And it doesn't matter if you're at the next tier.
That's right.
You're going to have to answer questions. And you're not going to say, oh, Sergeant so-and-so did this. No, you're going to say, gosh, I didn't have enough oversight and it didn't go right. And then you go down and address it at the lower level.
Yep.
And so trust is there because now his entire team knew that just because Sergeant so-and-so wasn't there, somebody was present and cared enough about that operation to make sure they were good to go. And as soon as they saw my face, that was the first time I was in that job. And I had just gotten there like a month and a half before that. So they had never seen me. They didn't know who I was. But guess what? After that, they all said, hey, Sergeant Hardy, I had immediate credibility because I knew what I was doing. I squared them away and their operation went the way it was supposed to. And the people that are executing care more about that than the people at the higher levels for sure, even though they make it seem like all hell is broken loose when something doesn't go right. They don't. Right. They're going to go on to the next thing as soon as they're done talking to you.
Yeah, exactly.
But, both examples I think are very important because they show that A, once in a while you're willing to get your hands dirty, but B, when people aren't doing what they're supposed to, if you're present, then that thing that you're accountable for doesn't fall apart.
And that kind of brings us back to something that we talked about early on in this live cast is the value of people, right? It's that you cannot be seen or you cannot believe that you're more valuable than your team, and your team needs to see that you place that same value on you as you do on everyone else.
That's right.
So again, that's just trust building.
I agree. Well, Chris, we hit the top of it's 29 minutes and 33 seconds. Since I was the host with my StreamYard account today, I'm going to go ahead and ask you, do you have anything that you'd like to share and final comments for the group?
I guess just never underestimate the importance of trust, the importance of relationships, and just that you need to go out of your way sometimes to let people know that they can trust you. And when you screw up, if you lose trust of people, you need to work 3 times as hard to gain it back. So you've got to keep that on your mind of maintaining trust and knowing how detrimental it is to lose trust, because with some people, I know, like, I'm one of those people. If I lose trust in you, the ability for you to gain it back to me, depending on the severity of it, may not ever happen.
Right.
And a lot of people are like that. So it just keeps us on our toes about our actions, and got to maintain that trust and always build it.
Yeah, I agree. And that goes back to a conversation that we had a couple calls ago where we talked about ownership.
Yep.
Make sure that once you have your team's trust, you take responsibility for everything, even their mistakes, to make sure that, you're not letting that slide. The moment you start blaming your team for something that you can help them with instead of blame them for, you're going to lose all credibility. And by the way, if you lose the trust of your team, it's just as hard to gain back. And you can lead through force and trauma and all of those other things only for so long before it starts to bite you in the behind.
That's
and
right.
Always keep that in mind. And by the way, I have to keep it clean for this. So I say a lot of weird things that I would make my kids say in this that I wouldn't normally say, but got to keep it clean.
You're better at that than I am.
Oh, I have to, I got to put on my professional hat.
Yep.
So, okay. Well, again, Chris, great conversation. I'm so glad we're doing this. We're going to come back in a couple weeks and we're going to do it again. We're going to skip over Thanksgiving and go to the week after. And
Yes.
And I hope everybody on this call, including you, Chris, I hope everybody has a great holiday. Always remember, be thankful for something and treasure that thing that you're thankful for. And if that thing is your family or whatever it is, make sure you acknowledge that and let them know that you're thankful, so that you can build those relationships.
That's right. And let me just follow up and say, if you're following along, if you're watching this either live or you're going to watch it on the rebroadcast, put your comments in so that, we can keep this interactive and keep this conversation going.
That's right. We need more visibility too. So if you go on YouTube and see this, like and subscribe.
Yes.
It's pretty easy. And by the way, if you share it, if you see us on social media, more people see us, the more people that get help, the better.
That's right.
Because we all deserve a person in our corner, whether that's us or somebody else, we don't care. But we've got to make sure that these topics are getting visibility. So
Absolutely.
Chris, it's wonderful again. We're at 33 minutes. I want to be respectful of you, me, and all of our viewers. So
absolutely. Have an awesome weekend. Great Thanksgiving. I'll see you all on the flip side.
Yep. Happy Thanksgiving, team.
See ya.